6:01, time to call the February 27th, 2025 board meeting to order for the Park and Water Board. We've got some staff. We've got Deborah Shosky. We've got Steve Hellman, Rebecca Anna, Jason George, Guy. Oh my gosh.
Itchy.
It's not the face I expected to see there. And Ron Redd, our manager, and Jeff Parker, our attorney. From the board, Bill Wasserman, Brooke Booth, Don Langley, Robert Kanaa, and myself, Merlin Klotz. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any unscheduled items of public interest? Seeing none. Any changes or additions to the agenda? The board, from staff?
We have none.
You see none. Board comments? Don?
Yeah, thank you, Merlin. I would like to make a suggestion for the board for us to conduct, I'll say, an analysis or study on the policy that we have for establishing appropriate levels for operating reserves for both operations and future water resources. The reason I bring this up, I've been having some discussions with the CFO and with Ron, about our reserves and how they're categorized, and it really raises the question of what do we think the appropriate amount of reserves to have is, and why do we have those reserves where they are. In addition to an operating reserve buffer, I'll call it, maybe think about bird flu or something like that. We need adequate reserves to pay for equipment and infrastructure repair and replacement. Due to old age and wear, a lot of that we will have to fund out of those reserves. We need to have funds for unplanned failures or loss of asset life, and I think a good example of that's the membranes that just kind of came to us unexpectedly. Maybe have some funds, available if we wanted to move on some water rights that became available. And then also, probably a very important part of this would be to have some reserves to be able to cover debt service, our debt service payments, if we got in an economic situation where tap fees basically went away for a while. So that would give us a little bit of buffer in that regard. So I wanted to bring this up as a topic and suggest that I think where Steve and Ron and I landed is we'd like to engage the whole board in these discussions rather than me cornering Steve in his office and asking him a lot of questions and stuff. And so I'll work with them to try and figure out how we frame that up, and then maybe bring some of those topics, go ahead and bring it to the boards. This isn't urgent. This isn't like an urgent matter. We're well reserved right now. There's nothing threatening us at the moment. But it certainly will be an important consideration by the time, we start thinking about rate setting and fee setting, which starts in late summer, early fall. So this is a kind of a project that we can kind of work on between now and then. So that's a suggestion I'd like to make and see if the board concurs.
Yeah, we think it's an excellent idea and appreciate Don bringing this up.
Anybody else? Okay. Leadership team comments.
Okay, I'll kick us off. So the good news is the reservoir is still hanging in there close to 28,000 acre feet. Yeah, I swear every time I look. So our 27,000 acre feet, we're up a little bit from a couple weeks ago. And again, it's nice to see the 106 plus feet. That's a great thing for water quality. James has a slide coming up in his presentation, he really showed us how much water we put away. So, but it's good news on that. I wanted to give some other updates real quick. It's been a really good week. I met with Commissioner George Teal yesterday, and it was a lot of topics, but basically he wants to help support us in our long-term water solutions. And we talked a lot about the ideas and thoughts out there. He's asked that him and I meet on a quarterly basis, and he's given me the number. He has an individual at Special Projects to keep them updated on a monthly basis where we're at, any struggles we're having. They have a new lobbyist with access to the federal government and potential grants, and he wants to include that. Him and the other two commissioners are heading to DC in a couple months, and the county themselves are looking at road safety type projects, but he wants to talk water with them because Representative Boebert is very interested in the water side, so he wants just to be informed. So absolutely, I welcome having the commissioners here and look forward to that. The other topic was, it was fun to see commissioners, their passion. He wants to work with us on opening up Rudder Hess more to the Boy Scouts side. And I just asked him, what's your vision? What are you thinking? And we can absolutely accommodate his ideas. It's mainly day trips for the Boy Scouts and doing what Boy Scouts do. The one thing that's a little different, but I think is really cool, is you give him a project, and he's thinking, and this is an ideal project, of some type of a structure on the east side where people can bring their paddleboards, canoes, and kayaks and store them so they don't have to be inspected every time they come back. And so it's a great idea. It's actually on a longer term capital for our rec authority. And if we can integrate that somehow with the Boy Scouts, that'd be ideal. So that was a great meeting. And it's good to have that conversation going. The other meeting I had was this morning, and it was Jack Hilbert, former county commissioner and current president of the Douglas County Water Commission. And it was I haven't seen Jack in years, and it was good to catch up. He had just a ton of questions on what we're doing from long-term water to recreation to fishing. He's a fisherman too. And there's just a lot of conversation going on there. But what I'd say came out of that is he at the end of it, he says, I learned so much. Will you come talk to the Water Commission? And so we're set up to go talk to them in May. And I asked him, what do you want us to talk about? And he had a couple ideas. And I said, well, if you enjoyed this conversation, let's address a couple main things and then just open it up. And we'll just have a free-for-all, ask questions. I'll be on vacation and Rebecca Tejada will be in charge at that time. But I think it'll be fun. It'll be a good opportunity for them to know us a little better and have that presentation. So we'll get that scheduled for May. He's I don't know if you know Jack very well. He's very supportive of a lot of things we do. He is a customer. Years ago, he spent a ton of money on a filter system, and I told him, good news, we're filtering the water right now. You don't need that anymore. I don't think he's going to get rid of it anytime soon, but at least he knows that we got a lot better water out there. So that was good. And then I want to let the board know tomorrow we are interviewing a very highly qualified CFO candidate, and we're very hopeful. He's been screened by HR and Steve, and again the comment, Steve is an upgrade. Steve likes him, so I think that's a good sign. But he also has the leadership, the values, the people skills. So I'm excited to talk to him, but we'll let you know how that goes. If in 2 weeks he's here and Steve isn't, you'll know it went really, really well. So. Oh, maybe we'll give it a couple more weeks. But so anyway, we're moving forward on that. So we're very hopeful. He lives in Colorado but commutes to Las Vegas That's quite the commute. So with that, I'm going to pass this along to James. James is going to do a year in review, but I just want to put it out there, it shows the strategic planning effort from a year ago and how we keep following up on it. A lot of this information will show up in our update on the strategic plan. So James, it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. So this evening, I am going to do the 2024 year in review. It's going to be a mixture of both pictures and numbers. I've got a lot of slides, so I'll probably be moving pretty quickly, but when we get through this, if you have questions, we can either talk during the meeting or offline if there's additional information that you would like. So we're going to start with wastewater. So 2024, 1.513 billion gallons of treated wastewater. Discharge average for the year was 0.028 milligrams per liter of total phosphorus. Our permit limit is 0.05. Our total inorganic nitrogen average for the year, 5.41, with a limit of 10. And the average turbidity, to give you an idea of how clean this water is, was 0.58 NTU, which is very, very clear. It's in the range that you would see maybe some drinking waters. There's 10 full-time wastewater staff, 2 seasonals, and we hired 1 new employee, Kai Cooper. Biosolids, 14.13% biosolids for the year, with 9,030 wet tons. By comparison, 2023 had 9318 and 2022 had 8477. So some of the things that came up during the year, as you will recall, we had some odor issues at the North Plant. There were a total of 13. And part of going through the year is going through some of the things that didn't work as well as we had hoped. There were some exceedances. Flow exceedance, there was 12. That can be directly tied to our lack of an updated permit from the state of Colorado. So we had 12 months and 12 exceedances. There was 2 chlorine residual exceedances, which is interesting because we don't actually feed chlorine. But what happened was that there was a backfeed of chlorine distribution water that ended up in some water that got discharged. And the water that we discharge doesn't have a lot of demand in it, because it's very clean water, so we're still required to test for chlorine. And we had two sites, because we tested Sulphur Gulch 2 times. The chlorine was above basically 0. And then there was 1 potentially dissolved copper incident that we don't, we researched it and we did an autopsy and did everything. We really didn't find a good reason why we ended up with a higher than permitted copper level. Additionally, there were 4 sanitary sewer overflows. Talus Apartments, One Stop Coin Laundry, Looking Glass, and Cielo. The important part of each of these is that these were on laterals. They were not the responsibility of Parker Water and Sanitation District. They were the owner's responsibility. So our cleaning process through our sewer lines and televising has worked very well, because there were none that were attributed to maintenance issues or something to that effect. So jetting and closed circuit televising. There were 74.3 miles that were jetted and televised, and there's a total of 255 miles of sanitary sewer in the district. Manhole inspections, 2,400 manholes were inspected, and one of the reasons why we do this, other than the obvious one that they may be significantly damaged, is that we're looking for infiltration. We're looking for places where water is making its way into our sewer system, and then we end up treating groundwater. So when we see places that there's water coming into our sewer system, we put it on a list and get it repaired and sealed so that we're not treating it at the cost for sewer. And there are 6,696 manholes in the district currently. So this gives you an idea of the flows over the last 3 years, and you can see the linear line there that gives you an idea of where flows have been going. We have a little bit of elevation in the summertime that you'll see, and we've attributed part of that to our backwash system at our wells. And then you'll see it's dropping off a little bit, and I attribute a lot of that to the work that's being done to capture those infiltration and inflow issues throughout the district. Engineering worked with us to put together a study. What was it, last year, year before? 2023, that outlined areas in the district to look for issues. So I also asked the staff to put together what they felt were some of the big projects, some of the big repairs and things that they would like to tell the board about. So we're not going to go through all of these. They're up here to kind of give you an idea. But one of the things that happened, and I believe we talked about this a little bit, was the odor control system being repaired at the North Plant. In addition to that, in 2024, we actually brought on the primary clarifier, so 100% of the flow at the North Plant is now going through that primary clarifier. And then we brought on the second 16-inch effluent line to Sulphur Gulch. At the South Plant, there was a clarifier inspection. So when you see something like a clarifier inspection, it doesn't really mean a lot. But what that really means is that this team got together and they scheduled this. They bypassed the plant, they pumped this thing down, they went into holes, they brought in contractors, they repaired things. So it's a big deal when something like a clarifier is taken out of commission at a wastewater plant. So here's a couple of the repairs. The second one is worth noting. This is the one that was over by the Parker, I think it's the Methodist Church on Parker Road, where we had the line that actually came apart underneath Parker Road a little bit, and we had infiltration. And this is the one that also had this was the first relining under Parker Road that we performed. So this was a big project. It took a long time to get done. And that was because of getting the permitting through CDOT and getting everything completed on that. But the big difference now in the amount of water that actually goes into that line and how it's flowing. So here's some pictures of what it looks like when they take down an A basin. So A basin or aeration basin, this is at the South Plant, and these guys are down there. They're replacing all those diffusers, the ones that are damaged, but they have to check them all. And then we bring in a contractor to help get that sludge that settles out at the bottom. It's not a very pleasant job, as you can imagine. But it's a necessary job, and it's one that your wastewater department does year in and year out. Here's another example of an unpleasant job. November 7th through the 11th, the extension 20-mile and Matzenbacher connection, the contractor actually bored through our sewer line. So our collections and industrial pretreatment person was out there dealing with this and getting this back online for 39 hours. So this took a long time to get it repaired, but she was out there and worked with these folks and represented our best interests in getting this line repaired as quickly as possible. I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. So you see where that person is standing, right below their boot there, you see kind of a hole. So the boring company started boring, they hit that. They didn't feel like they were lined up right. So they backed their bore out, and then they came over, and then they did it again and put the hole all the way through. So that was the cause of our trouble that November evening and few days. So moving on to the wells, 2.55 billion gallons of water produced. There were 4 wet wells and contact chambers cleaned, so that's where the water makes contact with the disinfectant, and those have to be inspected, and it's a big deal. Again, it's easy to say, but it's going into a confined space and going through with a pressure hose and cleaning it all out and pumping all that out. There are 10 full-time water and distribution staff, 4 seasonals, and 1 new staff member, Joe Chavez. And then the clay valves. Clay valves within the district, we try to get 1/3 of those done, and 100% of that objective was met. There were 21 line breaks. Now, 21 line breaks refers to anything from the actual line itself breaking to the valve coming apart. Anytime there is water coming to the surface that was unanticipated, we're calling that a line break. So that works out to about 5.25 breaks per 100 miles. And when we research this with Denver Water, industry average is about 15 to 20. So these are some of the programs that were completed by wells. Line flushing, 30.74 million gallons was used. It's important to note that of that, about 12 to 13 was actually used for the routine flushing to remove the iron and sediment from the lines, and the rest is actually part of the water quality, addressing the water quality, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, about the residuals in the system and why we're flushing that much. So there are 409 miles in the system as well. So air vacs are an important part. They're the ones that keep the lines from collapsing and from overpressurizing. They're throughout the system. And there are 169 of those, and 149 of those got inspected in 2024. Valve exercising. Those are actually built into quadrants, and this last year was a smaller quadrant, so 1741 were exercised. There are actually 9,035 valves in the valve exercising program, but as I mentioned, they're in a quadrant, so this year was a smaller than normal. Valve repair, there were 11 valves that were repaired or replaced. And the PRV stainless steel pilot conversion, so that's important to note because these PRVs control the pressure in our system between zones, into neighborhoods and so forth. And they come built with pilot systems that are made out of copper. So over time that corrodes, and if it gives way, your PRV fails, and you have pressure fluctuations in the system, and it's not a good thing. So our team went in, and I'll show you what this looks like. They went into these sites, and they've done 3 of them, and each of those that they did is a savings of somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000 worth of work versus contracting it out. There was one that was done by a contractor, so there were 4 that were accomplished, but one was done by a contractor. Leak detection, we went through Town and Country and Parker North, and the contractor reported 0 leaks found. Hydrant painting, there was 277 hydrants painted, and that seems kind of minor, but we actually get calls on hydrants, and people want those hydrants to be bright and shiny outside their house. So we try to make sure they are. So this is an example of the PRV, and so you see, let's see here. Is the laser at the top? This one? Okay, so these are the stainless steel parts that were all replaced within this PRV vault. So they will go back in, and they'll also address some of this surface corrosion that's occurring. But this one was actually done by the contractor because it had been a while, it had been flooded. You can see that it actually has a drain there, but I don't think it was working in that direction. So this one was repaired and replaced and brought back online. And just to give you an example of how nice it looks when those hydrants get painted, we actually have an employee that retired from here, and she came back just to paint hydrants. She loves working in the summertime and getting into the neighborhoods and painting these hydrants, interacting with our customers. So this is just an overview of some of the projects and repairs that occurred. Worth noting in here is that the district has completed phase 1 and 2 of the AWWA Safe Drinking Water Distribution Partnership, as well as phase 3 of the Safe Drinking Water for Water Plant was completed. These are both important voluntary programs that we participate in because they hold you accountable for improving your water quality, whether it's in the distribution or the plant. And there's a lot of testing and submittals, and there's a plaque that goes with it. But it's really about the interactions with other communities and making sure that you're doing the very best for your customers. Regional filtration project was completed and brought online. And another thing to note here is the lead and copper rule inventory was completed ahead of schedule. Kristen Reeves is our wells supervisor, and she was able to drop this number from 80 down to 21 by using both statistics that are involved in this, but also going through the history, going to the town and talking to Frank Yeager, that used to be the district manager, and getting an affidavit from him saying that certain neighborhoods actually were not permitted to put lead and copper in there. So the state accepted that as a legitimate investigation. So there's also an exceedance to talk about. So this was being reported on the Consumer Confidence Report. It's chlorine dioxide. Chlorine dioxide is used at the water plant to control taste and odors, to oxidize before it goes into the process. And what happened was it was turned on, and it was turned off immediately. And the operators believe that this water did not enter the distribution system. But anytime that process is turned on, there's a requirement to test in the distribution system. So while we feel strongly it didn't leave the plant, the state doesn't have that kind of flexibility in reporting. So it was a failure to monitor. And one of the things I wanted to show you real quick was, we talk about these little things like clarifier inspection, or this could be hatch inspection or hatch replacement. And this is actually the size of those hatches. And when they say, oh, a hatch got replaced, well, that's nothing. Well, yeah, it is something. Those are huge. And it's quite an undertaking to get in there and to put these things in place. And there's insides to this, and there's venting and all kinds of electronics. And security and all of these. So this is a graph showing the Canyons Wellhouse entry point. This is a testament to the approval and the forethought to actually put in filtration in the district. You can see how the filtration has dropped the total iron throughout canyons, leaving canyons into the distribution system over the last year back to 2022. So this is why we do this filtration. This is very important to our customers, and it really has an aesthetic value to everyone. This is the potable water production by source. So the water plant, wells, and Wise over the last 3 years. And this is what it looks like combined. So you can see the production going up over the last 3 years, which isn't a surprise to anyone in this room. This is the flow to Rudder Hess Reservoir that Ron was referring to earlier. So this is the water from Cherry Creek, the native flows in Cherry Creek, as well as the return flows, which is the Cherry Creek alluvials. And then there is some of the wells that end up being pumped up to Rudder Hess Reservoir. One of the ways that happens is at regional. As we're running the wells, the deep wells, it's more effective and efficient to actually just switch it from going into the distribution system into the pond and not stop those big deep wells with the big horsepower motors and then start them up, when demand picks up, if it's going to be, especially in the summertime. So we capture that water and use the most of our electricity and our horsepower. So this gives you an idea of renewable and the well system over the last 3 years, with 2024 showing 66% of the water being from the wells and 34% renewable. So this is the water that's coming out of Rudder Hess. So water quality concerns, they've been going down, but what I'd like to point out to you is that for the first time in 3 years, we have some months where there are no complaints. And the color, the red one, is much lower than it's been in the past. We still are working through all of the nuances of making sure our distribution system is in tip-top shape and making sure that we're providing the best tasting water. But things are getting much better as the years go on. So here's a little breakdown on the electrical and natural gas costs for operations. So on the left, we've got the electrical costs for the last 3 years between water and wastewater. And on the right is natural gas. I tried to find what the average kilowatt hours is for the district. And at 22, 23, 24, the EIA showed it at 0.084, but I didn't go through all of our invoices to see if that's because there's different rates we have for different bills. But it gives you an idea, and something you would expect is that there is more money being spent on electricity as we're pumping more water. And then the natural gas, we actually have a wholesale arrangement with a company, and so the amount of money that we spend depends on the market and how much we're using. But you can see that the water portion is taking up a little bit more, and the wastewater has actually come down a little bit. So going to the water purification facility, 840.8 million gallons was produced in 2024. 713 million gallons of WISE water was processed through that facility. And of that 713 million gallons, 253 million gallons was water that PWSD consumed. Some of the projects that occurred there include completing valve replacement on two skids, which is 116 valves. 65 membranes were tested for damage, and 5 membranes have been shipped to Japan for autopsy, and six membranes actually were shipped to Florida for analysis on a cleaning regime to see if there are different chemicals. So moving on to maintenance, 428 corrective work orders and 285 preventive work orders were logged. 55 times the electricians had to don full arc flash protection. And in 30 of these jobs, either fall protection and or confined space preventative measures had to take place, such as air monitoring and so forth. And then 20 times a chicken switch was used. So you may not know what a chicken switch is, but I'm going to show you. That's a chicken switch. So a chicken switch, a name in the industry, is a breaker that you actually put onto an existing breaker, and then you have a remote. So you put this on, and then you back away 40 feet, and you can turn that breaker on, so that if there is an arc flash, you're nowhere near there. And so they give you, they call it a chicken switch in the industry, but that's a really great safety tool for the district. If you've never seen an arc flash, it's a terrible thing to see, and it's deadly. So these are some of the projects. A couple of the big ones are at the, the headworks at the South Plant. There was a new Serpentex conveyor installed. That's the entire unit that moves the grit and the rags and everything inside the headworks. There was some back pumps, all kinds of different things. And down the last one there, the Rooter has Invent mixer install, is a big deal for us because that was the one that actually went down, and we were in trouble for a little bit until we got that working again. We had to put some temporary mixers in there. But this Invent mixer is now a disc mixer, so it's a big disc at the bottom of the tank. And before that, it was a propeller system. So this is an upgrade for us. And then here's some photos for you. This was the pulling and the repair of and the replacement or reinstall of the pump at the Cherry Creek pump station. So you get an idea of the size of these pumps at that facility. Moving on to the laboratory. This is just kind of a look at the number of samples. So about 33,000 samples were collected in 2024. And of those, 29,253 were run in-house. And the breakdown there between drinking water, wastewater, and source water is for you, with 672 biosolid samples being sent to a contract lab. We don't do those in-house yet. They're the special matrix. Digging a little bit more into the laboratory, this is a new discrete analyzer that was purchased in 2024, analyzing ammonia, total nitrogen, phosphorus, NO5, which is nitrate plus nitrite. And they're in the development process for doing hexavalent chromium, which will mean that we don't have to send those samples out. It'll run 3 to 40 minutes per sample. And it was $52,200 to purchase that. A good investment. Let me see. Wait, 1 second. Wait. Okay. So this is just the field in the laboratory. We have field technicians, and they go out and they do testing all through the distribution system and test for bacteria and all kinds of different things. But one of the things they test for is hardness, and this is just an example of one of the samples that they run, and it's reflective of what water source we're using. So as the year goes through, whatever the predominant water source is, it's not exact, but it gives folks an idea. We get a lot of calls from people asking about, what's the hardness at my house, and they can pull up information on where they live and give them an idea of what numbers they're seeing. This is an interesting graph. This is residuals in our distribution system. So as you can see, this line indicates that the residuals are dropping down. So in response to this, we are scheduling what's called a chlorine burn for the distribution system when we do flushing. What we will do is change from monochloramine to free chlorine for about 3 months while we're flushing in order to remove any biofilm that may be in the distribution system. This is a pretty normal process that you go through when you're using chloramines and monochloramine. So we're planning or scheduling right now to do that during flushing. We're working with engineering and our partners with Castle Rock and the other ones in Wise. But that's the reason why we're doing that. We want to keep that residual up through our distribution and ensure safety.
James, a quick question. What is the difference in the hardness from the water treatment plant versus our wells? Have we ever looked at that?
Yes, I don't know that number off my top of my head, but I can get you that difference for you.
Okay.
Without a problem. I don't know the number. So here's some Reuter-Hess reservoir data that I thought was kind of interesting and wanted to share with you. On the left-hand side is the dissolved oxygen, and on the right is just the temperature. So those are just 2 examples of the analytes that they collect out at Reuter-Hess. There are 20 other analytes, including metals and dissolved organic carbon, TDS, all kinds of different things that they collect. And some of these are done by hand, some of them are done with the profiler. But what's kind of interesting here is you see this little spike right there. That's when the reservoir actually turned over, when the lower part goes to the top part. It's a natural process that occurs, but it's nice to see, you can actually pick that up, and you can see the difference in water quality in the reservoir and begin to see a lot of different things. It's very important information that we share with our partners as well as part of an annual report. And all this information, if you're interested, I can get you full reports on any of this that you would like. So moving on to district services. So district services is kind of the unsung hero of operations. They do a lot of stuff for us that's behind the scenes, and if it's not in somebody else's job description, it's probably in theirs. There was 428 hours troubleshooting security issues, alarms that go off in the 53 buildings that we have that have alarm systems. 857 hours on snow removal, and then helping out the fleet department with 293 hours, 2,080 hours covering the warehouse, which means that somebody's always watching that warehouse. So when we get a delivery, we have somebody that goes down there and takes care of that. So in this room itself, so 178 hours were spent setting up the conference room the last 6 months of the year. And that's not including 26 board meetings, 12 all-staff meetings, and 4 quarterly safety meetings. So that's 40 events that they come in here and they just make it happen. And then it's put away, and that you don't even know it happened. It's just nice. It's nice to have this level of professionals that just, they take care of so much for us. Here's one thing they take care of. This is snow removal. That little unit that you see there is called a snow rater, and I'll show you a closer picture here in just a second. So some of the projects, the HQ move-in assistance, everything from coordinating warranty work to making sure that the warehouse items got moved. And at the North Plant, now that we've moved out of there, they converted the wastewater lab to a server room. So we can move off of the second floor and lease that out. Getting it prepared for rental, updating security systems in there. They also took care of the barrier arm installation. The district services, along with the security team, coordinated security system installation at Raleigh Downs Well. It's another one of our wells that now has a complete security system, including cameras. And this is something else they've done. This is out at Cherry Creek diversion site. So they go in there and they clean that sediment out so that the Obermeyer Gate doesn't get overrun with sediment, because Cherry Creek produces a lot of sand that's always moving downstream. So every year or so, they go in there and they clean out our maintenance area, and they make sure all the gates are cleared away. They get the logs out of there. They do all kinds of different things. This is the ATAD odor control system that we talked about before. They were out there helping with that, getting the rocks in there, getting the rocks out of there, setting up things, tearing down things. They're kind of heavy equipment operators, although we don't have that much heavy equipment. They coordinated fish structure hauling and placement, so I know that Director Wasserman can appreciate that. Those rocks are leftover rocks from Canyon's tank. So we repurposed them at Ruderhast Reservoir for fish structure. They did ditch repairs up at Ruderhast Reservoir, 1.6 miles following major rain events. They also coordinated the debris boom repair, which is very important for our water plant to keep logs and floating things from making its way down to the plant and taking us offline. So moving on to the fleet department. So there's one full-time person, one temporary person in there. Their last year's highlights are they purchased 14 vehicles were purchased last year. That was both 23 and 24 because of a backlog and from the factory. One snow raider was purchased, a gooseneck trailer was purchased. One of the things that John Chance, the coordinator for this, does is he does training on equipment. So over 100 hours was put into training new and existing employees on trailer, forklift, making sure that we're operating our equipment safely throughout the district and on the streets of Parker. And then we have a thing called Whip Around. Whip Around is it's a software that we require the staff to use before they get in their truck to go around it, make sure everything's okay with it, make sure the tires are okay, then, and to note any damage to the vehicle or anything that needs to be repaired, if a windshield wiper is not working, whatever. So 29 daily whip around inspections were performed. And to give you an idea of how much driving we do, 301,932 miles, up 31,000 miles. We had 19,400 run hours. Idle hours went down by 35 from the previous year. And there are 78 trucks and 53 pieces of equipment that consume 29,461 gallons of fuel in 2024. This is just the graph. This is the software that John works with that gives him an idea of what's going on with the vehicles. And there's the whip around inspections, how long they take, just over 2 minutes to perform. And then how long it takes us to correct something that's found as a defect on that vehicle, if it's a light that's burned out, or if it's a headlight, or whatever the case is. 8.62 days to get those corrected. There's a snow radar. So they stand on that in the back, and they use that all through these facilities. It allows them to get up close to the facilities. Whoops. And the last picture is of the boat training. And that's Jason Trujillo from the state parks, who was from the state parks. He's now part of Douglas County. He's helping the two new sampling techs learn about safe boating. So.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
So before we move on, I just want to let the board know all the sand that came out of the pump station. You've seen the guys out in Cherry Creek digging it.
Did you find any gold?
Upstream, about 1.5 miles, is an old gold mine. And so that pile of sand's waiting for someone who knows how to pan. And we think that might be a revenue source. So if you know anybody, let us know. We'll have them out there.
So what's the range on that snow radar?
What's the range?
Yeah.
Is it your neighborhood?
Yeah, I was wondering if I could make it to my driveway.
It could probably be put on a trailer, but I don't think that'd be a good public look.
So I know it's a lot of information, but we had a lighter night, and we thought it's important that you see what's going on in the organization. So thank you.
All right, it's my turn now. I have one slide. So James really upstaged me this time. But I did want to talk about the North Plan expansion. This is something that's going to come to the board here in the next really few months. So I want to start with talking about what our original plan was and what you saw in the budget even this past approval session. And that was the design was going to start in 2026, and we would look at construction in 2027 and 2028. As we went through this last master planning process, we realized that in 2023, we saw a huge uptick in the flows at the wastewater treatment plant. Now, there's probably some explanation for that. We had a very wet spring, but we continue to see a slight uptrend even after that. Like maybe the groundwater levels were still high, and we saw some infiltration that we hadn't seen before. But if you remember James's presentation, he also talked about the work we've done on really putting concrete in our manholes and fixing some infiltration. So we actually are seeing it level off a little bit. But when you look at the graphs that were put together for the master plan, what we first started to project was this solid orange line to be what our flows could look like. But this was still using no flow data from 2024. We had stopped at 2023. So we saw these historic lines from 2022 to 2023 just kind of shoot up. And then with the development that we were seeing, we were interpolating that it would continue to rise at that, almost that same level, and then as development slowed a little bit, it would kind of taper off. Well, when we started analyzing this, we actually got about halfway through 2024 and realized that we weren't seeing this trend anymore in that data. We actually were seeing it taper off a little bit, probably because of some of the groundwater issues, as well as the work we're doing within our collection system itself. But it still was exceeding what we had originally thought was happening. And so where this dashed orange line crosses our capacity of our wastewater plants is right here around mid-2027. So if we didn't have any additional capacity and we saw this continued growth, we would actually have exceedances beyond what our treatment plant could actually process. And so again, that's not a good thing. And what I don't want to do is just be like, well, maybe the flows will even taper off more. That seems like a really bad idea to just hope for that. So instead, what we decided to do was accelerate our schedule, still watch the trending of the flows, but work in parallel with that watching the flows, as well as accelerating the schedule. So we knew that this was going to be a design, build, delivery method, regardless of accelerating the schedule, because we need the plant to be operational as we do construction. So it's really important to have that contractor as part of the design so that we can really design it while we still operate the plant. And so you're going to see an RFP come out for an owner's advisor this quarter of this year. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow our staff to manage the project, but also have a team of experienced people working with them as advisors on how to do this expansion of our plant. And then we'll put another RFP out for a design build team in the second quarter of 2025. And that would likely get us to have an owner's advisor and a design builder on contract by around June of 2025, so mid this year. And these will all come to you with more details, more for your approval and consideration. I just wanted to get ahead of it so that you could see what we're doing to continue to make sure that we are operating our plant and have the capacity for our flows. So the plan will be to have a phased construction. So we'll start that design process and actually be able to have some additional capacity by the spring of 2027 so that as we get to this area, we have the capacity at our plant. And we'll be working with the state, getting their approval of our design and our methodology throughout this next year and a half by the time we get there. And then we'll continue that total expansion for a full additional 2.8 MGD by the end of 2028, and we'll have a total capacity of 8.6 MGD, which will then get us to around 2037. That would be our next expansion after that. And so I just wanted to talk about what we're doing here. So in our current budget, you'll see that we don't actually have budget in the appropriation until 2026. I've been working with Steve on what this can look like. We'll have to move forward almost the entire budget by a year. And then where we will find the funding for this year is one of the things that also stemmed from the master plan is that we actually have adequate storage in our system right now and for the next several years. And we had been planning on building the Ridgegate tank starting actually last year into this year. And that's budget that we are not going to need because we're not going to need another tank to be built into our systems until the early 2030s. And so we have allocated budget for the Ridgegate tank, which we're going to work with Steve and at your approval, reallocate to the expansion. So we won't be adding any more to our appropriation, but rather having that funding available for the expansion earlier. I just wanted to get that in front of you now because it is something we're spending a lot of time on. We're doing a lot of outreach to consultants, engineers, and contractors to let them know that this is coming because we really do want solid people on this job. Any questions on that? Okay, that's my one slide.
And just for me tonight, just one slide as well. So There's no financial report tonight. We usually skip February for the fact that accounting is working on the audit and getting everything ready for the audit. They'll be in here March 31st to do their field work, so we give them a break for February. There's also not a lot of activity that goes on just in January to report out anyway, because many of those expenses are charged back to 2024. The second thing to bring up, we've been working on some information that Director Langley requested 2 weeks ago on delinquent accounts and how much we have going on there, how many people we shut off. I just wanted to open it up to the rest of the board too, and feel free to email me if anybody has any requests they'd like to see that are put into the financial memo on a monthly basis, or even into the financial presentation, just let us know and we can try to get those incorporated moving forward. And that's everything I had.
Well, that looks like me. Can y'all hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Do you have video too? Can you see me, or are you just hearing me?
We're just hearing you.
Well, you've got your screen.
Okay. So I'm just staring at myself, man. That's good to know. Well, there's two things I learned tonight before I go into mine is I need to get a chicken switch for anything that I do at my house involving electrical work. And I would love to have a snow raider for my whole neighborhood. That would be a hero. But getting onto my legal work, I'm working on a lease agreement for the North Plant second floor. I know, Ron, you mentioned that during our meeting, but I want the board to know I've been asked to put together an actual lease. That'll be sent over to the tenant and probably some back and forth, and then hopefully we'll have something done pretty soon for the board to actually approve. I thought I'd have it done this week, but it's probably not going to happen until next week. The other one I have here is Jared has asked me to work on some IT agreements and procedures. I prepared like a joint non-disclosure agreement, data sharing agreement that's can be used for the district to help protect its information and put in some procedures for how we're going to basically make sure that anybody that has access to our system or access to our data does things in a way that protects the security of the system. I know Jared's given me some other agreements he'd like me to work on too, and I hope to do those pretty soon as well. But and during that conversation, I know Jared's got an idea that we're going to maybe have sort of a central repository for some basic legal documents, which I think we had for a while. But one thing I've noticed is that I have some updated professional service agreements and other sort of standard agreements that people can use in the district. And it seems like things get put on a server and then an old version gets used. And when I'm asked to look at it, I realize, oh, that's the wrong version. So hopefully some of the procedures that Jared's thinking about putting in are gonna help with that moving forward. James mentioned all the work going on, looking at the treatment plant filters and membranes and the issues we're having there. We've actually got a meeting tomorrow with James and some of the experts that are working on this. I am looking at some of the reports. It looks like there's been some more information that's pretty helpful. But we're still trying to get some more details as to what the causes may be before we decide how to proceed if we need to legally. So that'll come your way, maybe another month. We just have to wait for some more results. So just want to let you know that we're definitely paying attention to that still. I kind of wanted to mention the upcoming election, the Colorado's Fair Campaign Practices Act. I was invited to do a really short presentation with other people at a lunch and learn with the district 1 or 2 weeks ago. I'm forgetting, time flies these days. Just to talk about what people can and cannot do with respect to the district's election. And I just thought I'd basically remind the board members, anybody else in the district, it's pretty easy rule. You basically cannot spend any district funds at all supporting or opposing a candidate. You can't use any district resources like email systems, copiers, phones, or anything like that. And you can't do any sort of campaign work basically supporting or opposing a candidate while you're on the job. But people are pretty much free to spend their personal time as they wish and their personal resources as they wish if they desire to help or oppose a candidate. But I think it's important for people to remember that. Just don't use any district resources or money or anything like that, and don't do it while you're on the job. Last one, real quick, Alex DeFranco's been working on getting a Challenger pipeline project engineered and planned, and the town of Parker has had, I guess, a process that's been a little bit difficult to follow, a little cumbersome for the district, requiring certain property owner consents before they would approve an application or do a review. And I just wanted to sort of give a shout out to the town attorney. She's been super helpful. I contacted her and said, hey, this is a real cumbersome process. I don't think this is really working that well. Can we find something that's going to work better for the district, for future district projects? And so I put together some simpler agreements and a simpler process, and took her about 2 days to say that's totally fine. So hopefully some of the issues that I know Alex encountered trying to get the town to review things won't be a problem in the future. And frankly, when I spoke with the town attorney about it, I think those issues were pretty much resolved even with this project. But it's just nice to have another governmental entity that works well with Parker Water. So that was pretty quick, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have or give you more details on any of these items. And sorry I'm not at your meeting tonight, but I'm a little sick. I didn't want to get everybody else sick, so I'm staying away for another couple of days.
Any questions? I'm seeing none from the board.
Great,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you much, Jeff. Okay, that moves us to line 1, approval of minutes from the February 3rd.
Legislative update.
Got one more,
Oh, yeah, legislative update.
the fun stuff.
Try to make it easy for you, Deborah.
Thank you. So tonight, I just want to discuss 4 bills that are moving through the legislature. The first one is House Bill 1010, and the title of the bill is Prohibiting Price Gouging in Sales of Necessities. Normally, this bill would not even have been on our radar. It primarily has to do with commodities like toilet paper and eggs, things like that. So when there is a pandemic or there is the bird flu, that those prices can't be increased exponentially. However, Xcel Energy was able to get an exemption for themselves in this bill. And so that kind of raised a little bit of a red flag. And so our lobbyist recommended that he go to the bill sponsor and request that all utilities be exempted from this bill, because we didn't want it to look like only Xcel Energy was the only utility that could be exempted from the bill. So we'll keep an eye on that. Our position is to monitor this bill, and we'll let you know what happens from there. The next one is House Bill 1113, limiting turf in new residential developments. More and more conservation is happening in our state, and so these bills will keep coming forward. This one in particular bans non-functional turf for new multifamily residences starting in 2026. And then it also requires all local governments to have a policy for non-functional turf for new single-family homes by January of 2028. And so what we're going to ask is that since there are local governments and special districts like us that don't control land use, that we also be exempted from this particular bill. It doesn't make any sense because we have no control over land use. That's the town of Parker and Lone Tree and Castle Pines. We'll monitor this one as well and let you know if that amendment gets in the bill. The next one has to do with tap fees. House Bill 1211. This is a resurrected bill from last year. It died last year, but it did come back to life. Primarily developers are pushing this one to get the tap fees lowered. Our governor wants more affordable housing, and this is one of the ways that developers feel that they can bring the cost of housing down. There's been a lot of amendments already to this bill. So it's taking most of the teeth out of it. It, don't think will affect us hardly at all because our system for setting tap fees falls within all the guidelines that they're asking for anyway. Some of the things that they're saying is that tap fees cannot include routine operations and maintenance costs. We don't include that in our tap fees anyway. They can include the cost of infrastructure construction and acquisition and also water rights acquisition, and that's fair, and that's what we do as well. One of the things that the bill would like special districts and local governments to do would be to at least consider certain things when setting tap fees. So some of the things they'd like us to consider is our expected long-term water use, square footage of a premises or the number of bedrooms in a premises, low water usage appliances, or per unit fixture counts in bathrooms and kitchens. So the way that our fees are set, most single-family homes need a 3/4-inch tap. That is a set fee. Custom homes, which may have a lot more square footage, a lot more bedrooms, they may require a 1-inch tap. So that's going to be a different fee. We do take into consideration fixture counts in our commercial buildings. So I think we are perfectly safe in our practices. They are reasonable and they fall within these guidelines, but we do want to just keep an eye on this and make sure that these amendments stay put.
I think, a high-level summary is what we're looking for is right now, state law is pretty clear. We would not want a bill that makes state law unclear. And so that's all we're looking at. So, and Jeff's on it. So like Deborah said, I think we're going to be fine.
Yeah. And then the last bill, go to the next one, is House Bill 1286. This one is problematic for us. It is, the title of the bill is Protecting Workers from Extreme Temperatures. And what they are saying is an extreme temperature or working condition would be a temperature below 30 degrees or above 90, or humidity above 65%. An extreme situation would also be an air quality advisory that was less than good or moderate. So there are some problems with this bill. There is an exemption for organizations whose primary function is firefighting or search and rescue or emergency response, but it has to be their primary function. As you saw from James's presentation, we do get called out to line breaks and things that take multiple days to fix. Even though it's not our primary function, those things do happen. And so we are requesting that utilities also be exempted from this law. I spoke with SDA this afternoon, and they are fully supportive of our efforts to have utilities exempted from this bill. So that was some good news today, and we really appreciate their support in that.
So Deborah, summarize it. There's actually 26 pages of requirements required in this bill. So
Yeah.
we do a great job. I think there are probably landscape type companies or whatever that don't worry about
Yes.
workers. So we meet or exceed everything. It's just very cumbersome. So I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we are good. It primarily mentions agricultural workers in the bill, but it would affect more than just agricultural workers. And so, yeah, like Ron said, 26 pages of special PPE and special conditions and things that would be very, very difficult, especially in an emergency situation, to adhere to. So that's all I have for you tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about these or any other bills.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none. Now I'll go to approval of the minutes. Okay, February 13th, 2025 minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or changes to the minutes? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have a vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Accounts payable, February 1st to 15th. Anybody have any questions that haven't been answered? I see none. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Now we go to an executive session. An executive session to consider the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of other real personal property pursuant to CRS 246402-4A for the Platte Valley Water Partnership. Okay, before we get into that, I think it's time to have a 10-minute recess.
We just need some time. We have guests here tonight. We wanted to put it more in a work session setting. We got to shut down cameras and stuff, so we need a few minutes to do that.
Okay.
Did we get a vote on that? Did I miss that? Sorry.